Hello everyone, welcome to another build. This time it's a deck build. I'm gonna show off a different game. It's the game called Monster Train. And I've played this game for a whole bunch, and I thought I would just do a video on one of a run that I did. I didn't do a live recording of my voice because in part I wasn't sure if I would be entertaining enough, and another part was that yeah, playing a game and talking about the game at the same time, it's a bit hard for me, I think. So here I picked up a relic. Yeah, I just hope that you know the game at least a little bit, but what this relic does is that whenever a unit with Burnout dies, it deals 5 damage to every enemy on that floor. So um, this is good because I have a hero now that provides the burnout. That when the hero dies, it gives burnout to all the enemy units. What burnout does is, well, it's like a timer, and when it reaches 0, your unit dies. But you can keep adding burnout to make the unit last longer. So what I did here is I played one Impling and then played Little Fate, and well, for this turn I just ended up murdering the whole floor because else I wouldn't be able to get that last unit. This combat is with a try because I was pretty sure that with this relic I was able to murder all of those. And yeah, this is a bit of a useless turn, but it's still 5 damage to that frontliner over there. Here I'm just looking at my cards to see what I have available, and yeah, I thought it was a reasonable good chance. I got pretty lucky in this combat because I could have hit I could have hit the imp that died, but I was lucky enough to get Little Fate, which is the champion's name. And yeah, there's gonna be a couple more times. Yeah, here I didn't get lucky enough to get a reform. A reform means that a unit that died, you can reform it, and yeah, that just means that he'll get burnout and he gets some bonus stats. So every time you reform this Little Fate guide, he gets like 5 health and 5 damage. But that's not really the strong part of this, because every time he dies, he provides, at least at this level, he provides 5 damage and 5 health to every enemy behind him. So when you have, for instance, 4 imps behind him, that's 4 units that get the extra damage and extra health. So that can make a pretty tanky floor very quickly. Yeah, so I got pretty lucky in this combat with the random reforms. And I didn't really recognize this, but I did recognize that having a reform that wasn't random would be a lot stronger. And here I didn't want another unit, because I end up removing most units, because I didn't want my reform cards. If you don't have molded, relying on the random reform and having multiple dead units is very iffy with Little Fate. Over here I decided to go for a weapon shop because Little Fate really scales well when there's a unit on the same floor. And I decided to go for the Lady of the Reformed because she already has burnout, so it won't be detrimental that she has burnout. And the plus side is that whenever she gets hit, she provides burnout to every unit that already has burnout on the floor, which will be everyone, because Little Fate will be making sure everybody has burnout. And here I decided to give her multi-strike because the extra stats from Little Fate, yeah, they work very well with multi-striking units. Alternatively, you could just put a whole bunch of imps behind her, I guess, but I don't think imps are reliable enough in terms of the survivability versus a big unit like that, the Lady of the Reformed. And some other units also can provide some benefits that imps can't when you don't resummon them. And if you do resummon them, well, you need to find a way to kill them yourselves, and that would just put a big burden on the things that I would need to get in the future of this run. And this Lady of the Reformed is just gonna stand there and have a lot of health, because she gains a bit of health every time Little Fate dies, and she's gonna have a lot of damage because she has multi-strike, so she basically doubles the buff that Little Fate gives her. But I also had fledgling imps, which are the little red guys. There's two Queen's implings, which are different types of imps, but the fledgling imps, they provide some rage to the whole floor. So yeah, here I was debating where would you play that imp, because if he's in the front he dies, and I was thinking really that was a good thing, and I decided that it was, because if he dies, it lowers the chance of you getting a reform on Little Fate. I was lucky enough to get 2 reforms at once there, but that could have went a bit different. But now I can play even more rage on this floor. Now, not every play that I make is gonna be perfect. For instance, in the previous round I played the Rage Imp before I played the Queen's Impling, and yeah, that resulted in the Queen's Impling not gaining any rage on that combat. In general, this combat was pretty smooth and pretty easy. Yeah, I'm just letting Little Fate carry the run for now. I think this run can be very strong, but the downside of a run like this is that you start off with a lot of random reform, and these are 2 clans with a lot of units that often die, and the random reform makes it so everything gets a little bit less reliable. Now here I'm looking at these units and I see this branded warrior, and I recognize that he could be insane if you give him a couple of multi-strikes and stuff, because he could give rage to the entire floor, which would include the Lady of the Reformed with multi-strike that I already have, but he does need to get those slays, and I can't play him in the front. So I decided against that, because he's also very squishy, so there's a lot of things that could that could be very detrimental to that floor plan if I was playing that rage guy. So I'd either need to give him an upgrade for health, or I'd need to find a way to keep him alive, like with armor or whatever. Here I decided to look at this shop, and I got super lucky with this holdover, and I immediately decided to make my molded free and held over. And this is a pretty good play in general if you have Melting Remnant. If you have this the allied clan, then it's not always a good play, because, well, in this case it is, because I have a Little Fate that I want to keep resummoning, and to make that more reliable you would want a molded, and by making it free I make sure that I don't spend any energy on it. For instance, if you have Little Fate being alive, then it would be a waste of energy to have to play the molded, because if you don't play it you won't guarantee that you get it back next turn, so you need to keep playing it every turn in order to make it stick around. Here I'm looking at an event, and this event can do a lot of different things. One of the things is that it can make a card duplicate whenever you play it, and that would have been a good one. Another version is that if you don't play it you get a little bit of pyre health, which I think is generally the worst one that you can get. Although I believe the upgrade, the final version of that one, no, it doesn't even make the card free. So it's without a doubt the worst one. So here I'm debating how I'm gonna play this, and yeah, I'm just thinking about, do I want to go top floor, do I want to go bottom floor, do I want to go mid floor? And I think bottom floor was fine here. Because the thing is, I just want Little Fate to die as often and as quick as possible. And the best way to guarantee that is to just let them die in turn 1. And the reason why the Lady of the Reform didn't take damage there is because Little Fate dying caused the imp to get burnout, and when a burnout unit dies the whole floor gets 5 damage, which wiped out the entire floor there. Now here the imp also got the bonus stats, by the way, because Little Fate died first, so you can see here that this imp has a bunch of bonus stats. And part of those bonus stats is also because I reformed it, so it gained plus 10 health and plus 10 damage in total. So it's a pretty beefy imp already. And I don't think this imp even dies anymore. Well, maybe at the final battle, I guess. Now here I can see that that backliner didn't die, and I'm not sure how much of this I really calculated, but it turned out that playing the imp there helped kill him. And here I just played this aim to put 10 damage on the enemy boss, because I didn't really see a good reason to do anything else. And yeah, when you have a lot of units like this deck, in general it's smart to play out the units so you don't have to redraw them, especially if it's units like Queen's Impling. But if you don't have a reliable reform like I do right now with this held over molded, then you might want to consider not playing them, because else you might just keep drawing imps and stuff instead of your Little Fate that you want to keep keep playing and reforming, and so you can keep buffing the entire floor. So yeah, the downside of this combo with the imps and stuff is that there's a lot more units that might derp out the whole thing. But it turned out that I had buffed this floor enough. Well, the Queen's Impling died, but that wasn't the big player, it was really the Lady of the Reform that carried this run. And here I'm looking at these cards, thinking One-Horned Tome wouldn't work, because I would have to play it on the Lady of the Reformed, which meant that she would die with a single damage. Bounty Stalker, I haven't managed to make it work recently, and there were just too many things that you'd need to go fish for in different types of, well, mainly the steel shops. And here I found a Paraffin Enforcer, which is on strike. The other unit that I found earlier was the Branded Warrior. You can also see that unit here. He starts with a little bit more damage, but he needs to kill to provide the 3 rage to the floor. And this Branded Warrior has the caveat that it only works for burnout units. But with this champion I just make the entire floor burnout unit, so that doesn't really matter. So now on every strike he provides 3 rage to the entire floor. And this isn't very big in itself. You really need to give him some multi-strike. And what works even better is if you have multi-strike on one and you duplicate it so you can play 2 on the floor. But then you'd need to take space, and I didn't want to take space against this version of Seraph, because he tends to put well, if you play against this Seraph on the bottom floor and you manage to slay all the units that give you derp cards, as you will see later on in this run, yeah, I won't be able to slay them all in the early rounds, and that can really escalate, because they give you derp cards, which means that you have to draw those derp cards. They are called scourge cards. Let's call them scourge cards. So they give you those scourges, which means you draw less of the cards that you want to draw, which are the cards that you kept in your deck. And because you drew less of them, you might not be able to buff your units, or you might not be able to play your spells, which results in you not being able to kill those guys. And so that can escalate into you just drawing a ton of Scourge cards. So the general strategy is that you need some extra energies to be able to play the Scourge cards that you do get, because the boss also gives you a special Scourge card every 2 turns that costs 2 Ember, which means that you have to play a turn with 2 less Ember or just take the fire damage. If you take the fire damage, that Scourge card stays in your deck and you'll eventually redraw it, so I tend to just make sure that I can play that card and play the rest of my deck without having too much trouble. So having a free molded is a good part of that plan. It means that a lot of the stuff that I do, which is just playing Little Fate, is free. Yeah, here I'm debating, can I even get this skill? And I noticed that I couldn't, which was sad, because if I play these Queen's Implinks on this floor, they end up blocking the spot where I want to play that new unit that I had, which is the Paraffin Enforcer. As you can see here, he's a 2 pip. We call these little spaces on the floor pips. I think that's from board games. And I did want Fate to die, by the way, because else I wouldn't be scaling the damage enough, I felt. So I decided to play on the bottom floor and just let these guys go past. And I wasn't even able to get this collector. The collectors give you a bunch of gold. It's not static, the amount of gold. I think it starts with 25, and I guess it goes from 25 to 50 to 75, but I'm not sure on that. You might correct me if you know the exact values. So yeah, as you can see here, this is like a little taste of the final battle. I get these Weight of Contritions, which are cards that I need to play in order to not take damage from the pyre. And on this top floor, I thought, if I give him Burnout, then at least I don't take another Scourge card. And I valued that over keeping the Branded Warrior alive, because he burned out, because I played him later than the lady. The lady didn't get hit in between. So it ended up, yeah, because Little Fate dies and does 5 damage to the entire floor, resulting in the lady not getting hit. But it's fine. This combat is very comfortable. I'm not really scaling rage much, as you can see here. I only have 3 rage on the Lady of the Reformed, and that's because the Paraffin Enforcer doesn't get to hit anything. So the rage scaling isn't really working quite well yet, but that's in part because the backline was so weak, and in part because the not branded warrior, the Paraffin Enforcer died, and I had to rebuild him. I don't think it was really due to that. And here I have this choice of a Transcend Imp. So I could do a play where I do a lot of imp stuff, but then I need to make sure that the imps die. And I didn't think that that would work well enough for me to try, in order for me to try it. And here you can see this is I got the one that gives you a bit of gold. And I decided that it would probably be better to take it now. If you take it later, it makes the card free, but the card already was free. And now I have an extra battle where I have the opportunity to get gold from it. I didn't have in mind that I had this duplicate here, but I thought, wait, that's a pretty good target for a duplicate, because the armor helps me survive in the combat against the bosses. The bosses keep hitting your the same floor that they are on until everything is dead, instead of going up a floor after one round like normal units do. And here I'm fighting Crystal Cloak, and I got a bit scared and skipped I skipped the challenge of this combat. And in reality this challenge would have been pretty easy because I don't use spells on enemies anyways. And if I do, I don't use them to damage enemies. So I should have just taken that challenge. Now, because it's Crystal Cloak starts with H stealth. And what stealth does is that the enemy unit can hit me, but I can't hit them with the units attacking. I can hit them with spells, but not with units attacking, and that means that I need to survive for 8 turns before I can start attacking. And as you will see in this battle, that's a pretty tricky thing to do. Now here I decided to push that collector up because I did want that gold. And I guess maybe that was a bit of a greedy play. But I found a way that I was able to murder this dude as well. And that's by putting a bit of burnout on one of the Queen's Implings. And here I just played this Rage Imp because it would increase the damage of the entire floor. Now, it might have been better to play the Purifying Cleanse on the mid floor and just take the damage that that dude was gonna give me. But yeah, I didn't. I think I didn't notice that he was gonna burn out. So yeah, molded on the bottom of my deck. So here I'm gonna need to gamble, and I didn't. The gamble didn't really pay off. Yeah, so this is a bad one, isn't it? Well, I can at least play the Imp, give it Burnout, so the healer dies, which meant that 10 of the damage I did on that big guy wasn't healed away instead. So here I decided to clean out the pool of dead units, and I was calculating, can I kill this unit? I can't, because I have 3 Queen's Implings which deal 10 damage apiece, and then there's 3 units with Burnout which would be 5 damage each, so I can only do 45 damage. But he has Slay, Gain, Rage too. So if I use 3 units to do all that to him, then I end up giving him 6 Rage, which is 12 damage because you get 2 damage per Rage. And instead of getting 2 turns of 4 damage, I would end up getting 1 turn of 16 damage and 1 turn of, well, yeah, 1 turn of 16 damage, which is like 4 times more than 2 turns of 4 damage. Well, it's double. So that was a little bit of a min-maxing thing that I did, and this decision was a pretty hard one. So you're gonna see me trying to do the math and it's really hard because yeah, so I think the way this math works is that I need to survive those 8 hits that he does, and then survive. Well, he loses 1 stack on the bottom floor, so there's 7 rounds of stealth that I needed to survive, which is 7 times 13. So instead I decided to push him up a tiresome climb. So that would daze him for 2 rounds, which meant he would lose already 2 rounds of stealth, so I only needed to survive for 6 rounds before I could start attacking. And 6 rounds meant 6 times 13, so 6 times 13 is 60 plus 3 times, it's 78, and I have a little bit more than that, but not a lot, so it was still gonna be super iffy, so that's why I'm just hesitant to even play this. So I think the decision that I made was the right one, but I got a bit lucky here, I think. I do of course still have the molded that I'm guaranteed to get next turn. Yeah, I'm just staring at this. I'm sorry if this is boring for you. I hope you can appreciate the complicated nature of the situation. And here I decided to make sure the backline didn't burn out before they were able to do any damage. And as you can see, I did like he started at 580 I believe, so I did like 370 damage. And then here's the big choice, what do you reform? I've decided I first wanted to see what the random was gonna be, because I might have randomed the Lady of the Reform and then picked the Paraffin Enforcer or whatever to put behind it, but I wasn't that lucky. But as you can see, when I play this, yeah, this I can't play the Tiresome Climb here because he would just, well, I could have won with just a Tiresome Climb, to be honest, because he would take 2 turns of damage from the pyre and then he'd start attacking. I would have taken a lot of fire damage though, and I do not like taking a lot of fire damage. Memento Mori, it looks good, but I think you need to lose at least 2 or 3 units around in order to be able to make that strong enough to do anything. Or you'd need like a spell weakness build that might really capitalize on that. But I don't have either of those. I just have 1 unit that I want to die every turn. So here I'm thinking, yeah, I need the removal is nice, but I really needed multi-strike on that dude, and here I was thinking maybe Endless is smart. And why Endless might be smart is because whenever a Little Fate dies, right, he gives bonus stats to the entire floor, so that includes this Paraffin Enforcer. And the bonus stats that you get from that, they don't get removed on death. So in hindsight, I got a multi-strike there, and yeah, he didn't ever end up dying. But I thought if everything goes bad and I end up losing to a boss fight somehow, then I can still set up again with the Paraffin Enforcer and the Lady of the Reformed with my held over molded. So yeah, it was just for security that I did that. And here I thought, wait, there's a burnout there. 25 gold isn't too expensive, and it basically turns this imp into an imp that removes itself, and by removing itself deals 5 damage to the entire floor. And I thought that might be useful against Seraph, because he does tend to, because I'm gonna need to play bottom floor against Seraph, and that means that I might have trouble catching the units that he spawns above the bottom floor. So I decided that might be useful for some rounds or whatever. And here I'm looking at what this boss is gonna do to me. Yeah, he spawned top floor, but I don't really care about that too much. I did want Little Fate to die here, and I ended up misplaying this a little bit. Well, so far so good, but for some reason I pushed him up because well, the reason why I pushed him up because I knew that he would get double buffed. But then I ended up giving Burnout to my dude, which would have wiped the whole floor. Maybe I shouldn't have given Burnout, so the dude in the back could get 2 strikes, meaning 6 rage. But yeah, in the end it doesn't really matter. So let's talk about this battle a little bit. As you can see here, I played this armor card for the 25 gold, which was a bit greedy. I didn't want to play it bottom floor because there was an incant dude and I wasn't sure about the math on the bottom floor. And this play is a pretty risky play, but I do have an endless unit and I do have reforms, and I decided that it might hit the Little Fate, causing me to put some extra stats on the entire floor, which would be nice. It helped me scale a little bit extra. Yeah, so there's this incant shard, or the looming shard, which means that whenever you play a spell on the floor, it makes all other spells more expensive. And that's not just for that turn, that's for the rest of the battle. So that's a pretty nasty... Well, it can be nasty if you really need to... If you end up being very desperate to play the spell on that floor, then yeah, I would say you messed up, but yeah, that didn't end up being the case here. I ended up, yeah, so he did an incant shard first, or a looming shard. This means that he's gonna play a rally shard next, which means that whenever you play a unit, every other unit on that floor will end up being dazed. So playing it like this made sure that I wasn't gonna need to play a unit on that floor next turn, because Little Fate survived in this turn. And yeah, I think in part I didn't really think about these things. Some of these things that I'm doing here is just me having a bit of luck, I guess, or just luckily making the right play. I decided to play the held over molded there because I might need it if this floor ended up going bad. But it went alright, and I had some... I could have played the armor card there for 25 extra gold. But yeah, I don't really have money problems. Another Helhorned stone, which was bad. I don't have enough armor to justify doubling it, really. At least that's what I thought. Maybe you think differently, but I thought the rage would help me scale up a lot more. And scaling is really important against this, well, or any Seraph fight. The big units start to come out very quickly, so you need to, at least, especially in this fight actually, because you're on the bottom floor, so you have less turns for your units to scale to the point where they can yeah, do the damage that is needed to clear the floor. And oh yeah, here I decided to prioritize this side, in part because it had this event. And of course I didn't know it had this event, but I did know that an event on yeah, floor 7 is quite likely to give you either an increase in space of floors, or well, yeah, I was basically hoping for an increase in space so I could play imps on the same floor. And I got a size reduction for my unit, which meant that well, it had the same effect basically. Well, it also meant that I might be able to play 2 Paraffin Enforcers, and that could have been a line that I played it in. But yeah, I didn't take the space, so that meant that if the bottom floor would get reduced in size, I wouldn't be able to play the second Paraffin Enforcer on that floor. And now it just meant that I can't. Now it just means that I can't play a fledgling imp on that floor every turn, which is pretty much fine. I can just use it to remove the units that spawn above the bottom floor. And I'm looking at my deck here and thinking, can I just deal with this? So I end up trying to do the math of how much damage do I do on this, like, this first or second round, whenever I can play the 3 units that are most important out, and it ended up being exactly 150 damage. And yeah, after all that, the damage starts to scale with the multi-strike. Everybody gets rage, and Little Fate keeps dying and stuff. So I wasn't too worried about the later rounds, but the first round I wanted to make sure that I was able to murder it, because they heal to full health when they go up the floor. I believe it was that one. Yeah, they heal to full health. The little arrow with the plus sign on the top left means that they heal to full health. So as you can see, I did my math correctly. I ended up giving him Burnout just for the lols, I guess. And I wanted to play that Fledgling Imp there, because it was not super likely that anything was gonna get to there. And, well, I think, yeah, this play that I made, I didn't really need to do that. I could have also just played the other Imp. But I decided against that for some reason. So I'm getting a little bit lucky with the amount of free stuff that I have. And also, this was super lucky. I shouldn't have done that at all. I don't think I should have done that. I don't know. Maybe it was fine to do that there. Well, I would have lost 7 rage on one of those units. And I really wanted to keep scaling my rage, so I probably shouldn't have done that. Now, yeah, this battle really plays itself once you get past the start. And so I just decided to give him some extra rage. And that's probably smart to give him some extra burnout. It's not for the heal, but for the burnout, which is nice. So, yeah. This combo, it's pretty unusual to get. I don't know how unusual it is, but you can't say let's just play this combo, right? You have to get a little bit lucky to start off with Little Fate, and because I tend to random, so in my case it's probably luck that I got that. I could have just extended the burnout on that imp. I don't know why I did not do that. Yeah, now he dies again in like one turn. Whatever. It didn't matter. My units ended up scaling enough because of all the rage that I was getting. So it was fine. Now things that I still want right now. I got so much money there. Yeah, Engulfed in Smoke doesn't really work well in general with Little Fate. But you can play it before you play Little Fate, so I thought that would be fine probably. And some extra armor would be nice. I needed cards basically, because what this I already explained the whole Scourge card part of the final battle that I'm about to start. But the other part of it is, well, I didn't think that one was smart, because I wanted to have Little Fate burn out as soon as possible, so maybe it would have been smart, I don't know. Yeah, I guess we'll see in the final battle whether I needed that. But what the boss also does is every time, well, each turn the first spell that you play gets consumed. And as you can see here, there's a bunch of cards with consume on it already. That means that it goes to a special pile, not your discard pile, but just a special pile of cards that won't get reshuffled when you yeah, they won't get reshuffled during the battle. So that's basically a one-use card. There's ways to get those cards back, but I don't have those, and so I had to play around the losing the first card that you play thing by making sure that I have had enough cards to lose. And that's spells, by the way. It only works for spells, so having a very unit-centric deck, it might be a way to get around to it, but then you just lose all your spells, and I guess that could be fine if you're doing a very imp-based deck. Imps can be very strong, they can be a lot stronger than spells, and even in this run I could have opted to go with imps, because I did get the ability to get an Endless Fledgling Imp with Burnout 1, and I also got the Transcend Imp offered, so this could have been a run where I just played a bunch of imps and ignored the whole spell part of, but then Yeah, it could have been played like that, but that wouldn't have worked very well with Little Fate. So I would have, I guess, needed to ignore that Little Fate existed. So I got a size reduction on the bottom floor, and the amount of energy that I have didn't allow me to play the Engulfed in Smoke. And consuming the armor card without opening up any other cards to play, this just didn't seem very smart to me. Yeah, so there's a pretty nasty wave looking to come up, and I can't really do anything about that right now, because as you can see there, there's a Vengeful Shard. That's another thing that this boss does. So let's just recap everything that he does. There's these little... The unit here in the back is a unit that at the end of the turn gives you a Scourge card. He gives you a Scourge card that costs 1 energy and gets removed from the deck when you play it. So that's one thing that happens during this battle. Then there's the boss. He gives you a Scourge card that costs 2 energy and would deal 5 damage to the pyre. By the way, the Scourge card of that unit in the back does 3 damage to the pyre if you don't play it. And the boss gives you... I don't know if it's actually every 2 turns. It might be... Yeah, so I didn't get a molded here still. I wasn't angry, but I was a bit annoyed that I was getting a bit unlucky. Well, I wasn't really annoyed, I was just getting worried. But I also saw that the bottom floor was gonna die, so I wasn't really that worried. And here I decided to just tank the pyre damage and make sure I didn't get another Scourge card. Because the thing Scourge cards do is they reduce the speed at which you see all the cards you have in your deck. So if there's some cards in your deck that you really need to play, for instance like a Held Over Molded, if you really want to play that card, the Scourge cards can make it so that it just doesn't, it just takes too long and then you're already losing the fight. And yeah, here I'm gonna misplay a little bit. I was looking at this 5 damage on the Branding Right and thought, yes, let's use that, but I could have just used the Fledgling Imp because it had Burnout. So that meant that I basically wasted 20 armor on the top floor. But it doesn't really matter, this build is pretty overpowered already. And I'm looking at this last stand in my mind. And yeah, I just didn't think it was the right time, because I didn't need it to clear the floor. So I thought, yeah. Now, as you can see there, the backliner only takes 5 damage, which means he's not gonna die. So here I'm thinking, maybe I can just use the last stand to make sure he dies. But yeah, that wouldn't even have made a difference if I look at these numbers right now, because every one of the big ones would no, that might have made a difference, because Little Fate already does 5 damage. No, they didn't get up to 185, which is what they would need to single hit kill the big dudes. So there's a lot of things going on here, because the Paraffin Enforcer would also give rage after doing his first hit. No, he would need to kill on the first hit, so okay. It wouldn't have mattered, let's just conclude that. I was talking about what this boss does. Yeah, in general I probably can assume that you all know what this boss does, but so the first thing was there's units that give Scourge cards. Then the boss itself can give Scourge cards that cost 2. And he also puts 3 cards that cost 1 to play and do 1 damage to your pyre if you don't play it. But when you play them, they don't get removed from your deck, while the Scourge cards, so that the cards that cost 1 are called Blight cards, and the other ones are called Scourge cards. And Scourge cards generally are removed when you play them. I think not just generally, but just, yeah, they are removed. So here I'm thinking, hey, I'm doing damage to Seraph, a pretty good amount of damage even. So I was debating whether it would be smart to just play the last stand here to maximize the amount of damage, but I thought I don't need to play the last stand, so I'm not gonna play the last stand. And in this battle I basically trivialized the game with this setup, but there was a lot of decision making I still had to do, for instance with the whole imp situation, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff that really caused me to be in this position. But at this point, Little Fate buffed this floor by such a large amount, and here I just played the Crushing Demise to consume it. Yeah, I could have played it on the bottom floor as well, it didn't matter really. Well, on the bottom floor it would have meant that I had lost a bunch of rage on one of my units. And rage gives 2 damage per stack, and there's a little green icon above the units in the back which indicates that the front one, the Lady of the Reform, has 40 stacks of rage, which translates to 80 bonus damage. So without the rage she would have still had a whole bunch of damage from Little Fate dying, but the rage really gave the yeah, the icing on the cake, I guess. And as you can see here, I don't know, it might have been close because the Lady of the Reform still went a bit low. And I think that in general the game is often pretty close on this Covenant 25 level. And this is the first time I get a 6 win streak in a row. And I was pretty happy about that. And it's not a high score, but I don't tend to play for high scores on Covenant 25. Hey, win streak. Yeah, I hope you like this run. If you want to try it out yourself, I'm gonna yeah, there's gonna be in the description I'll post the challenge that I generated from this run, which means that every event and stuff can happen. I don't really know how it works, but I think it just gives you the opportunity to play the run yourselves. So here I'm generating the challenge. You can see how I ended up playing this, and you might have some fun trying to beat my high score, which should be easy because there was that battle where I didn't take the challenge. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'd like to see you again. Goodbye.